Hey, what's going on, everybody? Wanted to do a video on suppressors. Did a video sometime last year, could have been even earlier in the year. I think it was last year, of the Hux Works. And I probably did another one on the Surefire RC2, just like initial thoughts. Now at this point, it's been several thousand rounds through the both of them. I think I'll be able to give you a better representation on my thoughts on these, what I think about it, what I would get maybe instead if I had to do it over again, and maybe what I'll get moving forward, if any. So starting off with the Hux Works, the Hux Works 556K, okay? Got it in FDE. You can see how the color has changed just a bit. Just over time, that's what's gonna happen, especially if you have a suppressor wrap that melts on your can. But I think it looks pretty cool. So no big deal there. This one is about $1,000 right now. I picked it up for around 1,200 bucks. Remember that you have that tax stamp as well. So if you find them on sale like they are right now, I think it would be a pretty good time to pick one up. So about $1,000, cited from Silencer Shop. By the way, Silencer Shop, I know there's many different ways and places to get suppressors. I've had zero issues with Silencer Shop. I've had to call them just to check up on things. They're quick, they're fast, they get really good customer service. Again, going back to buying more than just what the product is, but you're buying customer service and warranty, stuff like that. Silencer Shop is really, really good, so keep that in mind. About $1,000 right now, so really good deal. Every once in a while, they'll run the free tax stamp, which is pretty neat. Again, come January, I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that. But if you're definitely in the need for that, look out for those. Unfortunately, right now, the government's shut down, so they may put a little bit of a damper in your purchasing, but it is what it is, right? So $1,000 right now, not a bad price. The really cool thing about the suppressors, the way they mount, you do have to get a muzzle device from Hux Works. It's not hub compatible, so they're gonna be using their muzzle devices. However, they're gonna be mounting on a left-hand turn. Okay, your muzzle devices can be righty-tighty, right? So as you take your suppressor off, if it's became carbon locked, you don't have to worry about taking your muzzle device off with it on accident and then getting your muzzle device stuck in the suppressor. Okay, it turns opposite from the muzzle device. So really good feature there. Really good thinking by Hux Works, because this being carbon locked is a real thing. It happens. So coming in at the length, you have 5.5, so not long at all. Folks running the 14.5s, 13.7s, 13.9s. Nice and short. It's not going to turn your rifle into a musket by any means. And this may be coming in a little bit blurry, folks, but I'm running all these videos off of a iPhone. Okay, I don't have super duper cool cameras. So 5.5 on the length. Again, not bad, very short. This is what a K can represents, the short cans, the small cans. The weight on it is probably one of the best features. It comes in at 11.8 ounces. Again, 11.8 ounces brand new. This probably weighs a little bit more now because I have some carbon built up inside. Understand that happens. That will increase the weight of the unit. That will, in my eyes, increase the sound detonating because it's more broken in, it's primed. They do sell cleaning kits. Hux Works advise, I believe, around 10,000 or so. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's about 10,000. They sell a cleaning kit that gets a little pricey. It's like 80 bucks. It's a cleaning solution. You let it sit for about a day or so, and then you hook it onto your rifle and you shoot out the rest of the remaining cleaning agent. And that's basically how you clean these and keep these up to par, up to standards, so they last you for a very, very long time. So again, 11.8 ounces, very light, very maneuverable, makes it really nice. What you don't want is a 2-pound weight on the end of your rifle. Makes it uncomfortable, makes it unwieldy when you're standing up doing drills for a long period of time. Maybe you're hiking with it, whatever the case is. Just pay attention to what you're putting on your rifles and how much it weighs. For compatibility, obviously it's a 5.56 can, so you're going to be looking at 5.7 by 28s. You can shoot out of it 17 HMRs and then 22 calibers, right? So it's not a 7.62 can where you can shoot down from there. It's a dedicated 5.56 can. I went with a dedicated because I wanted the best performance I could possibly get for sound. I know chasing sound on a 5.56K or a 5.56 can is, it's kind of silly, to be honest, because 5.56 is a very loud shooting round. But that's what I did. But I am happy with it. I am very happy with the sound profile. Now, I know that's a very mixed subject when it comes to this can. But let me kind of explain why and what I did and how I tested it. So when you're the shooter, when you're shooting, to me, it's a very pleasant sound. It's not super piercing. It's not like a huge explosion going on. Shooting it with a muzzle device, it's a very nice, pleasant, muffled sound. It's by no means is it Hollywood silent or 300 blackout silent, but it does decrease the sound profile a very good amount. Now, as a bystander, when you're standing next to someone that's shooting with this suppressor, it is noticeably louder. It sounds more of a louder crack, I guess you can say, a deeper pitch. So it does change a little bit. But understand, everyone's ears, just like everyone's eyes, are a little bit different. Same thing with your ears. You will pick up different sounds than the next person next to you. So understand that your miles may vary when it comes to the sound. The second test or third test I did with this was I had someone shoot this and I was about 75 to 100 yards away. That's when I noticed the most decrease in the sound profile. It sounded very muffled, still sounded like maybe a firecracker, but by no means was it even close to shooting without a suppressor. So it made me very happy that only 75 to 100 yards away from the firearm going off, it did decrease the noise signature in a very large amount. So very happy with that. This guy is full auto rated. With that being said, if you are shooting this, let's say for distance and you're prone and you're maybe gonna shoot 500-600 rounds, I would definitely purchase a suppressor wrap for this, because of the fact not only is it gets hot, but it gets hot and creates that mirage. So you will get that mirage through your scope, and the heat will increase very rapid with this being built out of stainless steel, okay? So taking pauses before your next string of shots are gonna be something that, might be needed depending on what that ambient temperature is when you're shooting. So just keep that in mind. Each suppressor will have a shooting schedule in terms of how hot can you get it. I would pay attention to that. You never want to create too much heat within your barrel, and just ruin your gear. So it does give you a good layout in your manual. I won't get into that. I will let you look that up and then decide if you want to follow that or not. But lastly, like I mentioned, this was a stainless build. So overall, very good suppressor, very good price. It is gonna make shooting your rifle that much better because this one is flow through. So you will have that flow through technology where you're gonna have the exits of the gases through the front, and Hux Works will give you a diagram on how this inner chamber works, but it sends the gases back and forth, back and forth. So typically this will be a little bit louder than a traditional suppressor. You do have all those vent holes in the front, but what that's gonna aid you in is you're gonna get zero gas to the face, people that maybe don't have a suppressor yet and think like, oh, is that really a big deal? Yeah, it is a really big deal, especially if you do a lot of shooting. It will spray you in the face, it'll get in your nose, you will ingest it over a long period of time. That could lead to lead poisoning. That's not something that you want to get into. So this is not only very good for what we mentioned already, sized, weight, the flexibility on how it can stretch and what the features are that it can do with you, but it's also a little bit safer and a little bit healthier for you as well. I would say if you're shooting outside mainly, maybe that's not as big of an issue. Maybe more so for the professional folks shooting in, shoot houses and stuff like that. With this being a flow through, there's no restrictions on barrel length, and what it will do is it will soften the recoil of your rifle. It will definitely work with your rifle as long as your rifle is gassed properly to be suppressed. I'm not saying it needs to have an adjustable gas block. What I'm saying is these rifles are tuned to run suppress, things like i.e. Geisley, Sons of Liberty. Majority of BCMs have no issues with tinkering, you know, depending on the barrel length with BCMs. LaRue, the you know, high-end rifles, basically. So this is a pleasant, universal 5.56 can that you can put on all of your rifles if you have, you know, multiple, and you don't have to tinker with buffer weights, don't have to think about barrel length, stuff like that. This is a really, really good design and product for that. So the shootability increases a lot as well. So good stuff there. Really like the Hux, and we'll move on to the next one. So the next one is the Surefire RC2. So know that right now the RC2 was superseded by the RC3. There was also a RC2 Mini. I decided to go with the full-length RC2. This one comes in at about $1,100 bucks. Okay, about $1,100 bucks as the time of this recording from Surefire. Here's just a quick visual of the suppressor. Here we go. Have the locking collar in the back. Your release tab here. All right. So the length on this one is going to be 6.4 in terms of length. So just as a quick comparison between the two, you can see visibly looking, it's maybe 3/4 of an inch longer. Oh, there we go. Than that Hux Works can. You can see the differences side by side there. So 6.4 on the length. Now where this really kind of gets a little bit dicey and differences is going to be the weights. But it's going to come with some additional features that the RC2 doesn't have. So the weight on this one is going to be 17 ounces. Okay, 17 ounces. So a couple of different things. If you have a rifle and you've got, let's say, 1 to 8, an average 1 to 8, which is, or 1 to 10 even, you know, that weighs maybe around like 27 ounces, and you've got a mount that's, you know, 5 ounces with a piggyback 12 o'clock red dot, and you got a flashlight, and you got a pack, you know, just you've got more shit on your rifle, which I'm not saying you don't need, right? And there's not, you know, it's not a negative to have a heavy rifle, just acknowledging what you have for what you're using it for. This is going to add significant weight to the front end of that rifle. So I find running this on a rifle with like just a red dot and a lightweight light, it's perfect. There's no issue with this, okay? Just because it's 17 ounces doesn't mean it's too heavy. I'm just saying if you had a rifle that's, you know, packed with everything to the gills on the rail, then you added this, you might start feeling that, especially if you're using this for any kind of, you know, training, practicing, stuff like that. If you're going hiking with it, it may become a nuisance then. But again, I mean, the rifles, you know, hey, they're heavy. You know, look at the rifles from World War II. Now, with this weight, the construction of the suppressor is definitely not stainless. This is going to be Inconel. So Inconel, and actually it does have some stainless in it as well. It's a very hard substrate of metal. This, you know, still gets hot, but it doesn't get as hot as fast as that Hux Works. Okay. So that's pretty neat there. I have less mirage issues with this guy here. But in addition, when I reach that high envelope of heat, guess what one takes a little bit longer to cool down? Yeah, it's a Surefire, right? So Surefire does take a little bit longer to cool down. but then that Hux Works. So, it has pluses and minuses to it as well. The RC2 is dependent on 10 inch barrel or longer. It is rated for full auto as well. Now, this is not flow through technology. This is your traditional baffle technology within your suppressor. So keep in mind when shooting this, if it does not agree with your rifle, you may have to tinker a little bit with your rifle to get those ejection patterns to be correct. But again, if you're in the gun space, tinkering with it is probably your thing. So not that big of a deal. Sometimes that's just, a new buffer or a new spring that fixes that issue. So no real big issue with that. What attracted me to getting the RC2, in addition to having the Hux Works, is I wanted, I guess I wanted a suppressor for, if I can have one forever, it'd be the RC2, right? Versus the Hux Works. This is lighter material. This is, gets hotter faster, higher chance of possibly warping something inside. Now this one is 3D printed as well, so don't forget that. I forgot to mention that these are 3D printed. Not that it's a negative, but just the way it's built. The track record, something that I can't speak to, right, because I don't use this professionally, but the track record that's out there, that's been proven, these are military use case. Sometimes that gives a bad taste in people's mouth, like, okay, if it's military use, it's the cheapest one that was in the bidding war at that time, right? Sig Glock. But no, this is used by SOCOM, went through the SOCOM testing where you're doing various amounts of weathered testing and high rates of fire. There has been viewable reports where it's shown and counted that there's upwards of 80,000 rounds. So there's one that was 80,000, one was 40,000. I think the one that Grand Thumb talks about was a 40,000. 40,000 round count on one. Those are round numbers that I'll never get to. So if I wanted something that would stay with me forever, right? One is none, right? Two is one, type deal. So I wanted one that was almost indestructible. So that's why I went with the RC2 to have in the collection. In terms of lockup, so this does have the lockup through the Surefire muzzle devices where you will have a notch inside the collar here. See if I can get that to focus. You line that up with the muzzle device. You start to then spin the locking collar. You can hear it lock. Once it's tight, if you do have like an 1/8 of degree wiggle room, Surefire says that's okay. If you have the ability to make it a little bit tighter, you can. I like to not have any kind of play with it, whatever. I've done it both ways and I haven't had an issue. I've had 0 issues with the lockup of these suppressors, even when they've been carbon locked to a point where I had to use a wrench on this. It still came off. It's just carbon lock is a thing that you have to kind of understand with suppressors. Again, putting a little bit of grease in there as well will make it a little bit easier. But again, I don't try to keep these on the rifle forever. I do like to clean out the collars, just lube them up a little bit, just to make it a little bit easier on me. So if you're experiencing any kind of issues with that, you can definitely try that. You probably have seen videos where, and honestly, I believe that Surefire was, I think they might have this in their manual. I could be wrong, so don't quote me. Maybe I heard it somewhere, but you can actually shoot these off the rifle if they become carbon locked. I probably would not do that, but that is an option that you could do. Now, these typically don't have any kind of issues in terms of getting these serviced or repaired. However, if you do have like baffle strikes, there's been reports that you could send these in and Surefire can rebuild the suppressor. However, when that's done, rebuilding that suppressor is almost the cost of a new suppressor, is what I've heard. So don't quote me on that, but again, these are just things that I'm hearing that look them up for yourself, right? If you're getting into it, do some of that research, that independent research. Lastly, what I'll say as well, if you're using any kind of suppressor, it'd be very smart of you to buy and purchase an alignment rod. So an alignment rod will be used once the suppressor is mounted to the firearm. and you're gonna take that alignment rod and you're gonna shove it through all the way right till it hits the tip of the suppressor. The alignment rod is probably, I don't know, 14 inches long, something like that. The idea there is to identify where that rod sits within that hole. You wanna make sure that rod is not favoring one side of the suppressor or the top or bottom portion of the suppressor. It wants to be centered right in there in the middle. That's how you know that it's centric through the inside of that barrel, and that round won't give you a baffle strike. Some of my friends do it, some that that don't. However, I did purchase one, and I use one every time I get a new rifle or put a new suppressor on a firearm. That's how I knew one of my uppers were out of spec, which ended up being sent back to the manufacturer, and it was confirmed at the manufacturer, and they rebuilt the upper. So I thought that was pretty neat that I was able to check that out. And I would just advise being as safe as possible, purchase that alignment rod. They are kind of expensive in terms of what they actually are. I think they're about 80 bucks, maybe 70 bucks, but definitely worth the investment in getting one of those if you guys are thinking about shooting suppressed. When it comes to rounds, ammo, I haven't had any kind of issues in terms of bullet grain weights from 5.56 into like 223. That variation, no issues. It's pretty much the same there. But the actual bullet weight itself, 55 grain to 77 grain, zero issues at all. Some of the dirtier ammo, like Winchester, will definitely make the suppressors a little bit more shitty to shoot. To be honest, you'll get a little bit more gas that I experienced, especially out of the RC2. So this one does give you, unfortunately, a lot of gas blowback to the face. I do have a Radian charging handle that's supposed to help on that. I don't know if that's a gimmick or not. I probably wouldn't spend a ton of money on that if that was out there for me, but again, that's what you're gonna get with a traditional baffle design if they're not a flow-through technology. When shooting prone with these, you typically don't, or at least for me, experience a ton of blowback, because I think what's going on is that it's kind of going over you almost. But when you're out shooting drills, you are receiving a lot of that blowback, and that's kind of just pelting you right in the face. So that is something to think about. Is it something that stops you immediately? No, but it's something that's might burn your eyes and kind of give you a funny feeling. So definitely understand that is something, a trade-off that you might get with that. So what would I do if I had to purchase another one in the future? So there's a lot of good stuff out there right now too. So understand that CAT is a leading technology right now. They've got like 2 more coming out pretty shortly, if they haven't been out already. Noting that the majority of my rifles are compatible as of right now with Hux Works, and understanding when you guys are changing out muzzle devices, all right, they're not like the A2 bird cages where they're like $8, right? These muzzle devices for these suppressors are about $100 to $120. Okay, it's kind of where they get you. So making that decision is going to be kind of a big deal, depending on where you want to put a suppressor across your platform. I think personally, the next one that I'm looking at, it maybe is something that you guys can kind of skip the 5.56 K-Can, and you'd get a little bit more feature out of, would be the 5.56 Ti by Hux Works. Now this one there, or that one there, is going to be a little bit more expensive. You're looking at about $1,200, so an additional $200, but it is going to be a titanium, like it says, a Ti 65. It's made out of titanium 65. It's 6.8 inches long, so you're getting a little bit more length. It's actually a bigger suppressor. It's almost the size as the RC2. So it's 6.8, so a little bit longer actually than the RC2. So 6.8 on the length. It's going to be 11 ounces, 11.4 ounces to be exact. So let's go back here. So we're talking about a larger suppressor that's 3D printed, that's going to be titanium, that's going to be a little bit longer. Okay, so we have or excuse me, 6.8 on the length, so 0.4 longer than the RC2, so not much. But it comes in at 11.4 ounces. Mind you, the RC2 was 17 ounces, and the Hux Works 556K, the smaller can, is 11.8. Okay, so due to that material type, you're getting a bigger can, which is gonna solve a better issue when it comes to sound for a lighter unit. Okay, I think that's pretty neat. There is no limitations with that either. So there's full auto, obviously. There's no barrel length constriction on that. And it's been noted and tested that it stays beneath 140 decibel. So that tells me that that's going to beat out the 556K can, and that's going to beat out the RC2. It's probably going to be around a little bit less loud than the RC2, but I would say it would be significantly different in different placements of sound for this. So what I mean by that, it's going to be a better sounding suppressor than the 556K. Okay. In terms of like sound, I know that's not the main reason of a suppressor, right? But you know, if you're shooting on your property, maybe at least for me, I have a homestead here. I have animals that we raise. We have a farm on the other side. We have a couple people on our east side of the property that I don't want to be a nuisance. So sound does matter, right? I know they're not made for sound. They're made for flash suppression, but in my case, I don't use it for that. I don't shoot at night. So for me, sound is kind of the deal why I'm picking one up. One thing I wanted to mention, in addition to the TI, 556 Ti, when it comes to sound, when I first purchased the Surefire RC2, there was the first day where I was shooting this, and I was really excited because everyone was telling me that this was a better sounding suppressor. I shot it, and I probably got through about 3 rounds, and I could not shoot this any longer because it pierced my ears to the point where I just did not want to shoot it. I was kind of pissed. But I continued to shoot it and use it, and what ended up happening was kind of like what I mentioned with the 556K can. We have more carbon built up inside, so it sounds a little bit different. That's exactly what happened to the RC2. It built up, I'm guessing at this point, more carbon, and it's definitely a way more pleasant sound. You can definitely shoot this without ear protection if you wanted, and you won't have that piercing sound. But understand it's probably going to take about 300 to 400 rounds to get to that point, but it's definitely achievable. All right, so if you guys are picking one of these up, just remember it may not sound great until about your 300 to 400 rounds, and then from there you should get the sound performance that you're probably looking for. But going back to future purchase, yeah, I'm probably looking at a 556K, or excuse me, 556 Ti. That's going to be a little bit bigger of a suppressor. It's going to be a little bit better on sound suppression. It's going to be lighter as well, and it's still going to work across my entire platform. And I think that's really neat. That way I can have different uppers and lowers, still configured the same kind of way. But keep in mind, like I mentioned, the alley cat, or the cat white bread, is a really, really good suppressor too. It comes in very high. So if you are shopping for suppressors, definitely check those out. There's definitely a lot of videos on the, let's see, Lazarus, I think it is. It's supposed to be really, really good as well. But I believe that's by Dead Air. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Dead Air's got a lot of good ones. Dead Air had some issues with one suppressor that they didn't warranty very well with others when they had issues. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. But keep in mind, again, going back to purchasing product, you're not only just purchasing that product, you are purchasing the people that work at the company, in a sense of, will they be there for you if something happens? So I'm definitely a big component on paying a little bit extra just to go through a better named company that may support me a little bit better, God forbid, if something happened, right? So with that said, do your research. Know that, you know, chasing the 556 sound is going to be pretty impossible. You're going to get pretty good results with certain cans. Probably the best with that cat white bread is what seems to be, you know, the best sounding can. in terms of like pew science and stuff like that, but do your research, understand what you want to use it for. Does it fit the profile of your rifles? Can that be spread across your entire collection? Is that something that's going to have to, be interchanged with different muzzle devices? Understand the cost in that as well. And then lastly, just have fun, right? So these are really cool devices. They each have a different type of purpose. Obviously, if we're, going to be talking home defense or, just ranch protection for the animals, or just getting out, having some good fun, they each have their place. Do your research, identify what one works best for you, and pick up a can. And don't forget, right now the government is shut down, so if you are sending in a request, you're probably going to be within a pool of delayed requests, so that might take you a little bit longer. You might save a little bit of time and headache rather if you just kind of waited till January, so you don't have to walk into that tax stamp of $200. But you never know what's going to happen, right? So, will the manufacturer of these suppressors increase their rates because they know the consumers are saving money? You don't know. So maybe you do buy one now before the first of the year. So it could be a gamble. I don't know. But if you guys have any comments, concerns, as always, put in the chat. Give me a like if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, see you guys.